I've been using YouTube for a number of years to research various products that we pick up. I find for the RC community it's a great way to get direct feedback on the quality of new kits, the performance of new kits, and then also the differences maybe from one model to another. Uh, my family's been into RC toys of various types for quite a few years. I grew up on them, and I saw at the hobby shop recently had these new Dromida Vistas. He mentioned they had got them Friday a week ago. We went and picked one up, my brother and I, and we have a bayou area behind our house. I'll get some footage of that later. So we were out flying it, and sadly it took a blow pretty quickly on, and it bent one of the rear prop shafts that come out, and bent it pretty good, pretty quick. There was a little bit of tweaking to the frame as well. That was within the first couple of flights. There was no parts available at the hobby shop at the time. He said it's just so new. So because he had so many kits and the price point was so competitive, we figured, you know what, let's go ahead and pick up 2 more kits. We'll use the extra one as a part kit, so to speak. So I kind of wanted to go over, as I've been searching YouTube for information, I haven't found a whole lot of these things. Yes, this is a used kit, but I'm pretty good about keeping the boxes. So I just kind of figured there might be some people out there who want to see a unboxing. This is my first unboxing, so bear with me. Just kind of go through and give people the information that I think that they want to see. If you have any comments or feedback, I'll probably try to do these on kits that interest me. So I'll pick them up and I can kind of use that information going forward. But to kind of break into it, this is by the Dromida line. They've kind of been mostly a land RC company. They have some 18th scale vehicles, which I think are pretty neat, pretty decent quality, good price point. They came out with, I think it's the Omnibus or something, previous model. It had a pretty similar design element, and from what I recall, it just kind of had these straight legs. It didn't have the cross supports here. It looks pretty neat, never had one, but I had heard about the durability, seen quite a few videos online. It looked like a pretty good deal. So whenever this came out and they had it, I mean, at a price point of $80, ready to run, it's so cheap to be able to get something, go out, fly it pretty quick. And because the feedback was relatively good and my hobby shop had plans on stocking all the parts, I figured it'd be a pretty cool thing to break into. Doing a little bit of research that I have, the RC Sailors referenced that, and they had the old and the new, that he felt that there was some changes to the programming of it, that it seemed to be a little bit more stable. And I've definitely noticed that compared to videos, it really stumbled coming off of a flip before, and now it snaps back pretty good. As long as the battery is in the first 50% of its capacity, it'll snap back pretty solid pretty quick, whereas before it kind of seemed to stumble a bit. Beyond that, because I haven't flown the two, especially not back to back, I can't really comment, but I have heard that the propellers on this model are from the FPV version of the last one, the Omnibus, that had the camera on the bottom, so they may provide a little bit more lift to help deal with the camera that was previously below it. I believe they also had a 750 milliamp LiPo. Now it comes with the 850 milliamp LiPo, and I think there may be some different control modes as well as a different camera. I'm sorry, a different transmitter. So this is completely ready to fly. What you're going to get is you're going to get a USB charger. You're going to get the AA batteries for the transmitter, which that will be about the only difference in here. As I open it, I've obviously already put those batteries into the transmitter, so you won't see those, but I kind of packaged it back up like it was, just so y'all could kind of get an idea for what it comes with and how it comes out of the box. Nice box art. I think they do a pretty good job with it. It shows you on the side here what color you're going to get. This seems on all the boxes that at least my hobby shop had, they just had this one image on the front and on the side, and so you kind of had to refer to the side sticker to see what color you had. It appears to be 4 colors. There's going to be the green, red, white, and blue. And if I'm not mistaken, the lights on the front of it, underneath on the belly, they also coordinate with the color front props that you have. And here's kind of everything included in the kit. 4 extra props. There's 4 extra screws too to mount the props to the shaft in a baggie. 4 AAA batteries, the controller, a little screwdriver. It's kind of cheesy. If you have a real kit full of decent screwdrivers, I'd probably actually scrap it. noticed it was kind of rounding off some heads. The USB charger, the new LiPo 850 milliamp, and then the unit itself. So let's go ahead and break into it and see what we have here. Kind of have the camera set up. Hopefully it's a good angle, but I'll kind of lift everything up so you can see it. So as you can see how the box opens up here, you have the instructions. I've heard previously that they were in color and now they're in black and white. To be honest with you, it's not a big deal to me. I mean, as long as the information is here. I know a lot of us use the internet as a resource anyways, or we're kind of familiar with how these things work. I feel like all the pertinent information is here. It even goes over gear shaft replacement, motor replacement, changing the flight control board. Real short troubleshooting section goes into your warranty, the sensor calibration. So it really covers the information that I feel is necessary for someone who may even not be familiar with the quadcopter. Also on the back you can see they have a pretty solid exploded diagram. So this is going to show you piece by piece every little screw, nut, bolt, bearing in this. So if you happen to damage the copter or want to stock up on some extra parts, you can look it up online or through your local hobby shop with the specific number. So that makes it a lot easier. They put kind of a clear covering here. It helps keep everything from jostling around. I like it. It also gives you a pretty quick presentation, and if the hobby shop wanted to say display it like this, they could get a quick peek without having to rifle through everything. Pulling off this clear cover, we'll go ahead and pull the copter out first. And again, I chose the blue. I thought it was a neat look, and keep in mind that this does have quite a few flights on it. So it has the blue across the top, which if memory is correct, it does light up a little bit. We have the indicator bulb on the back. We have a 4 LED system on the bottom, and actually a good portion of these wings actually light up whenever it flies. Rubber stoppers on the bottom, ball bearings for the prop shafts, the battery here with a little tab which is convenient to get it out, and then the new design. On the old design, I noticed that some people would kind of twist this a little bit. It was just a single arm that came out. There was no cross support here, and it seemed like there was quite a bit of flex to it, as if they really weren't putting that much pressure on it and the motor would tweak back and forth. Just thinking about it, I would like to think that there's enough power and enough pull that when you're doing some aggressive maneuvers, you know, it could become almost like suspension arms flexing on an RC vehicle, where it creates somewhat of an inconsistent experience. The model's not going to react the same time to the same commands every single time, because if that deflects, it's going to change the angle of the prop and could change the maneuver that you're trying. But at the end of the day, these are pretty low powered. I don't know how much of that actually happened, but I do feel that this cross brace, I've heard it referred to as kind of like a bat wing look. I think that's pretty accurate. Definitely adds some stability. And so as you try to twist this, it really reduces that fore, aft, and even side to side flex, because it is tied into this. And stability is actually amazing. I was a little worried that with all the plastic on it, it might feel a little heavier. But like I say, I've read that they pulled off those props from the FPV unit of the previous model, the Omnibus, so it's made to deal with a little bit more weight. And I feel like it does pretty good. I would like to see a little bit more power out of the motors, but it's a $79.99 kit. You know, I'm already pleased with how much it comes with, and I gotta say that there's not really a whole lot that I would change. Moving on to the controller, and again, I've already put the batteries in it. Kind of scratched that up there, just ignore it. But you're going to be able to go through and see your flight modes up here. By pushing in the joystick, you're able to change your dual rates, bump them up quite a bit. So if it is, as it comes out of the box, blue, it's going to be toned down. I don't know what the exact percent is, but it's going to be pretty docile. It's not going to be too aggressive. It's not going to get you in trouble. The gyro stabilization is going to return it to level pretty quickly. This is the mode that I'm currently flying in. I probably have about 5 or 6 packs to it, still kind of getting the hang of it. Pushing down on the right stick until it beeps once will change those settings and give you much more aggressive throw rates. So now your pitches and all angles will be quite a bit more aggressive, but you still have the gyro stabilization. And you can do in mode 1 or 2, go ahead and turn off that gyro stabilization where it blinks. It'll blink blue for mode 1, and then it will go ahead and blink, it's orange to me or red, in mode 2. And this definitely requires a little bit more of a skilled hand, because no longer will the aircraft return to a neutral setting. If you pitch it to right, it will stay right and continue to go in that direction until you do something different. So I'm sure that for the really trained people out there, the people who just have more experience with this, I'm sure it opens up a bunch of maneuvers that would not be ordinarily allowed, or somewhat limited by the internal gyro trying to constantly correct it. But for someone like me, who it's been a long time since I've really flown a heli or a quad, I'm really kind of just getting back into remembering the basics and getting smooth flying patterns down. And so I prefer to fly in the initial flight mode for now. I'm kind of thinking down the road, I'll bump the rates up by pushing the right stick in, but I can't see a whole lot of times I'm going to fly without that kind of return to neutral or the gyro kicked in. Beyond that, it does include 4 props, which is nice. I've found that I've whacked this quite a bit. It's been flipped, it's been hitting a tree, it's bounced off the roof, it's bounced off cars, my cars, not cars going down the street. But it's been pretty stable, and you know, it's held up well. Like I say, on the very first model, we did bend that shaft, but we have a bayou behind my house, and so we had it up and we turned that gyro off, and we really got it clipping at an angle, and it basically drove that corner right into a fence. And I've heard that that really is the weak point. Sometimes these are design weaknesses where that part will bend because it's cheaper than replacing other things that would damage as a result. So I don't know, but I have heard something about some alias shafts in a conversion, and I can go to that later. So you get 1 of each propeller, which is nice, and then the screws, they go through and there's a little hole in the shaft, so it basically is just a set screw to lock the propeller to that shaft. The shaft has a flat part that's machined, and the prop fits over it, so that's what keeps it from spinning. Essentially, that set screw is just to keep it from pulling it up and off that prop shaft. It is geared, as I believe the last one was. I've heard that it's quieter. I don't have anything to compare it to, being that there kind of is a metal gear on the motor, then it looks like a nylon or composite, what I'd refer to as a spur gear from RC car terminology. There is some noise to it. The direct drive, kind of just where the motor drives the prop directly, is quite a bit quieter. But it's not a bad noise. It's not a grindy noise or a mechanical noise, but you know, you can definitely hear it, which isn't really a problem for me. So just thought I'd mention that. It is ball bearing supported, which is nice. You have access to the ball bearings at the bottom, so you can put some oil on them. But on the top, you probably have to really get down in there with a small kind of stem on your oil bottle, or probably take the prop off, pull the top of the gear off, and then access the bearing from there. So spare props, we already went over the battery. That's here. Again, a single cell LiPo, 850 milliamps, 25C. And then we have the traditional kind of come with the ready to runs USB charger. So this will require that you have the AC converter, which I've used it for one that works from an iPhone, one that works from an Android. It'll pretty much work with anything, but you may want to refer to the manual. I'm now using a hobby grade charger, and I've used this only once or twice. I found that the hobby grade charger tends to give it more punch. With any battery, the slower rate you charge it at, the battery will last a little bit longer but not have that punch. And with a hobby grade charger, if you charge it at the maximum charge rate it's able to be charged at, I feel that it has a little bit more punch till the end of the flight, but the flight time seemed to be reduced by about a minute. So this is all that you have. It'll definitely get you off the ground. I think it's a nice way to go. I can't say that the charge times have been that much shorter by using a hobby grade charger, but it's just a lot to have this around, you know, keep one of our outlets tied up. And the other thing is it gets pretty warm, so it's just a little concerning. I've had this probably get to about 100 degrees. There would also be a very small screwdriver, as I think I mentioned earlier. Oh yeah, we actually have it here. So this was in a bag. Just a basic micro Phillips head. It has a kind of a bolt type head on the top, so I guess if you needed, maybe there's something that you can attach it to, I'm not sure, to get better grip, but it's just pretty hard for a guy like me with big hands, and it's not that well machined. It's pretty cheap, so like I say, we actually found it rounding out the screws a little bit for the set screws, so probably try to get a better screwdriver if you can for how much you use these things in the hobby world. And then there are your screws, so it's just the 4 screws that go into the props. I haven't really cross-referenced it in the manual, but it may be screws that are kind of universal and can be used throughout the plane. But I do think the exploded diagram would go into that. You can see if that really is the case, and use them anywhere if that tends to be an issue. So in terms of stability and flight, I gotta say I'm really happy with it. You could probably attack this as a beginner or a first-time pilot because it is so stable. You can kind of get it up in the air and do small things with it and grow from there. But even with the motors being a little bit underpowered, it still clips at a pretty good rate. So, you know, it can get out of hand. It's definitely not anything that I'd recommending unless you don't have anything breakable indoors. It really needs a little bit more space to kind of stretch its legs. But it is a really fun model. I think even in the first mode, it's fast enough to probably keep most intermediate level people happy. In the advanced mode with the greater throw, I've seen these things zipping around pretty fast. You know, it's a lot of fun to go out. We usually do it once or twice after work. My brother will come over and meet with me, and you know, we kind of play with it. I'm not good enough at night yet where it's as easy for me to reference the colors and find out front to back. I don't think it's necessarily a result of the unit, as it lights up pretty bright, and I actually like the look of it at night. But really, if it's down below your line of sight, and I'm a taller person, really the only reference that you get is this back indicator light, and that's something that it kind of blinks when it's first binding to the transmitter, then it turns solid. So, you know, it's kind of hard to tell exactly what your position is at night if you can't really see the difference in color on the props. Now, once you get it above eye level, then from there it's a little bit easier to tell front and back. But the issue is, for me, at least in my neighborhood, at that point I'm putting it in the range of trees. So it's kind of neat to fly a little bit lower underneath the canopy of the trees. It does have the low voltage detection for the battery. I found that whenever we charge it up on the USB charger, I can get 45 seconds to possibly a minute out of it before it's pretty much dead and can't support its own weight. Whenever I do it on the fast charger, it seems like I get more about 20 to maybe 40 seconds before it's pretty much dead. So you do want to make sure that near the final couple minutes of your flight that you're not taking it too high, you know, not stretching it too far beyond your reach where you got to go pick the thing up. So just little things to keep in mind, but I think that those aspects are true with all models. I will say I had there's a flip mode, which, you know, it kind of takes the fun out of it in some ways because it's automated and it's doing it for you. I remember when a lot of these quads first came out, you really had to get it to the advanced section where you have the greater throw, and you kind of had to pitch it left and pitch it right, and there was some throttle timing to it. And there was actually a little bit more that went into the flip, which, I mean, I guess the novelty of that was neat for me because if you saw someone do a flip, you know, they had to have the greater throws. They probably had a little practice, and there was a little bit more that went into it. Now you basically just hit the flip button, which is located on the left toggle right here. And then however you move it, next, forward, backwards, left, right, it will then do a single flip to that side. I've tried hitting the flip button multiple times to see if it will do a triple or double flip. Haven't been able to pull that off yet. You can do them pretty quick consecutively where it only needs about a second to settle, and you can hit the button again and go into another flip. So, I mean, it'll flip, wait about 1 second, and take another flip and another command. And it does steady itself pretty nicely as long as the battery is more or less has, you know, 50 to 75% of its juice left. As it gets lower, it tends to do that wobble coming off of the flip like the previous model did that I've seen on videos. But it is nice, especially for beginners, because you can do it in either mode. It's easy to kind of go do that flip, make yourself look like a pro, and then I think that with the gyro settings changed in the advanced mode, I probably could go back and do manual flips and even do more of them, but I'm not at the point where my skill level is there yet. Where I was going with that though, you got to pay attention to what you're doing, especially when you first get it. I was meaning to hit the flip button, and I hit the flight mode button. I pulled it back to do a backflip, and I essentially was about 10 feet up and just drove it straight down into the ground. You can kind of see that there's some white on the plastic right here, and this is a little bit flat. Same thing over here. On the back, you can see that it's gnawed up a little bit right here and gnawed up right here. It just drove straight down to the ground. So I am happy to report that I cracked the motor cover, but we used the extra unit as a kind of a spare parts. And so I put the new motor cover on and everything's been fine. Something else I did want to notice, because we had swapped out a couple motors before we realized this. If you're flying it, say get it stuck in a tree, and you're trying to blip the throttle to knock it down and there's a bind on the motor, sometimes even once you get the unit out and you turn it on, that motor just will not work. We actually replaced the motor thinking that that was the issue, but there seems to be some sort of built-in stop or fail-safe where if that motor is under load, it will kind of shut down that motor until the unit is reset. So what you actually want to do is unplug the battery from the plane, give it a couple seconds, replug it, and then I always just go ahead and to kind of reset the internal gyro, you turn the high rates on because it's going to be a little bit more precise, and put both sticks to the bottom right, and at that point you'll see the undercarriage lights flash a little bit, and then they'll come back to solid, and that resets everything. So once we've done that, the motors have come back. There is only one that was burned up, and we actually saw a small puff of smoke come out of that. I think it had gone down in a little bit of grass. We were thinking we could lift it up out of the grass, and it just had the prop on one, just kind of burned itself up. But it really, I know that I'm mentioning that we've had a couple issues, but there have been some pretty bad accidents. I think that if you were flying it on grass or someplace where it could take a little bit of a hit, I think it would be not an issue. And these are the original props, so I'm happy to report that. Being that we have the extra units, we've kind of just been robbing that for parts, and to kind of go ahead and show you that now, two of us flying these things, we probably have, I have about maybe, I don't know, 7 to 9 flights on mine. My brother maybe has 10 to 12 on his. You can actually see what happened when we wrecked it last time. You can notice it just a little bit, but if I spin this shaft, it has a little bit of wobble in it, and it was actually very, very bad. I mean, that thing was bent probably 15, 20 degrees where it actually would come into contact with the body. I pulled it out and tried to straighten it back, and I was actually shocked at how flexible those aluminum shafts are. I gotta think that it's by design, because it would be something that's pretty cheap to fix. When I ordered parts for mine from Tower Hobbies, I just went through, and the parts are so cheap. So for $40 shipped, I ordered 2 frames, an extra set of props for each of us, 2 sets of gears, 2 sets of shafts, 2 sets of the motor covers, 1 battery brace. I actually came down on mine on the rock. It's scratched up, but it's not damaged. And I think that's it. But I mean, the frames were maybe $6 each. The little covers here that go over the motors were maybe $3 each. I think the prop set was kind of the most expensive part, and to be honest with you, you can get a decent bend in it like that, but a lot of times you can kind of be gentle with it and bend it back. It's a little bit of a pliable plastic, and you know, this one was bent pretty bad, so it'll probably never be perfect again, but you can bend it enough and get it straight enough where it's not going to have a bad wobble or shape to it. You can continue flying, especially until you get used to it. There's probably no sense in throwing on the brand new set of props only to have them scratched up and damaged. But like I say, this has kind of been the parts one that we've removed parts from for $79. I mean, we got an extra battery pack, we got the extra props that came with this, and this unit as it sits here, plus an extra transmitter should something happen. So that's been a pretty solid deal. I will try to go ahead and get some flight footage of it pretty shortly. The only other thing that I wanted to mention, in going on YouTube, I did notice that one gentleman had modified his. I don't know if it was this version or the previous version, but from what I hear, the shafts are pretty much the same. He actually took a Traxxas Alias shaft and it apparently is kind of designed in the same sort of manner where it has a raised portion that stops it from sliding through the bearing, so there's no E-clip. It just has a raised portion on one side of the shaft. You slide it in through 2 ball bearings on the bottom, slide the gear over it, then on this particular model you put the screw through the side. On the Traxxas Alias, apparently the prop goes over the top and there's a screw that threads into the aluminum shaft. And I believe he mentioned something about you need to, on these, when you pull the gear off, the gear has kind of a plastic shoulder on it that rises the prop up a little bit. And as you can see, the props have a small raised portion there, but the gear has one just like it. And he was either cutting that off completely or it looked like cutting most of it off. To be honest with you, in the video, it didn't seem like he was too worried about precision, and he was just kind of taking quick cuts with the Dremel tool. And when he bolted it all up, it seemed to work pretty well. But he was saying that those shafts are substantially stronger and can take a hit, and he was kind of more or less trying to bulletproof his plane. So, you know, aftermarket companies are pretty quick to get on this stuff. Like I say, I haven't really researched a whole lot about the previous plane or even this plane. I'm still learning. There may already be some heavy duty shafts out there for the other model that will fit up with this one, but that's really the only piece of this that I could say that I wish was a little bit stronger. If I find the part available, I may go ahead and purchase it, but you know, again, sometimes these are designed fail points so that you don't break something more expensive, you know, or something more time consuming. It may be the same cost to replace a couple shafts as it would be to replace the entire frame, but at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot more work involved in changing over all the electronics, the motors, to a new frame. Whereas if you can just unscrew this one screw, slide a bent shaft out, put a new shaft in, and put the screw back in, you're going to be up and running quite a bit sooner. That is another thing I thought to mention. If the shaft is bent pretty much at all, it's very difficult to get through the bearings. So kind of what you want to do is drop it just a little bit, get 2 pairs of needle nose pliers, and work it back as close to straight as you can before trying to force it out. Otherwise it gets trapped in the bearings and you could, you know, mangle up the plastic trying to force a bent shaft back out of it. But other than that, I've been real pleased with it. I can't think of any other things to mention. I'll try to get a flying video pretty soon. The flights are somewhere in the 8 to 12 minute range. Also, we did find, and this is nice, that out of the 3 batteries that we have, one of them, we actually marked it, is 890 milliamps. So not a huge difference. They're rated for 850, but the others are just about 850 on the nose. If we fly the plane till it won't even spin the props anymore, it just blinks, we can put somewhere around the range of 840, 850, 860 in it. But this one, when brought down, will take what is that, 868, or sometimes I've even seen it as high as 880. So this battery does actually fly for about another 30 seconds to a minute compared to the other 2 batteries. So it seems like, you know, even the worst of the batteries are what they are rated at. You can sometimes get one a little bit better, so that's nice to find. I think Dromida did a good job with that. And that's kind of just what I wanted to do, get some more information out there about this plane. Any comments, any feedback, please feel free to let me know. This is my first time setting up the camera and going over something, so I'm sure there will be some trial and error, but hopefully the video came out good, and I'll try to keep up with it and answer any questions that y'all may have. Thank you.